Hey y'all, welcome to Redzone Rodeo. I'm Carson,
Yeah, I'm Rob.
and today we're going to be talking about a lot of different subjects regarding football. So stay tuned with us as we cover some awesome topics. First thing first, I think we should introduce ourselves just a little bit more so you know who's talking at you today. My name is Carson Butler, and I've been following football for a little bit now. Um, this kind of podcast is going to be focusing on the professional football. So we're going to be talking about the NFL and the newly created spring league, the UFL. And if there's some important college football news, we're going to throw that in too. So um, just right off the bat, though, so you all know, probably already can tell which teams we're a fan of in terms of the NFL. But my favorite team is the Tennessee Titans, and I fell in love with the team mainly because of my love for country music. And that kind of led me to the Titans, and here we are. Had not so great of a season, but hey, we're going to look forward to it next year. And going over UFL teams, since those teams just recently got released, we're going to end up talking a little bit about that later in the show. But we're going to be discussing just our favorite teams, so you just know already off the bat who we're going to be following. So my favorite team that I'm going to be rooting for this upcoming season in the UFL, the United Football League, will be the Houston Roughnecks. All right, Rob, tell us about your teams.
Yeah, well, I'm Rob DeCenzo. I've been watching football basically my entire life, ever since I can remember. I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm not from Texas, so you might call me a bandwagon fan, but I promise I'm not. I'm just a fan of America's team. They're the team that has the most fans in America. Roger Staubach at quarterback back in the '70s or '60s, whenever it was, Captain America. I've just always loved that imagery, and I also have a lot of family in Texas. So that's why I've been a Cowboys fan basically my entire life. For the UFL, I might be a bandwagon fan, but I'm a consistent bandwagon fan. So I want to keep all my football teams based in the Arlington area. So I'm a fan of the Arlington Renegades.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Yeah. I should probably have mentioned as well, the reason I'm drawn to Houston is another reason why I've started following the Tennessee Titans was because of their history, their team history as being the Houston Oilers. And the Oil Derrick logo is something super cool. And they're going to be bringing that kind of back with the Houston Roughnecks. So kind of going back to the roots of the Titans and choosing the Roughnecks. But before we jump into the United Football League, I think we should talk about the NFL playoffs, which are right around the corner. We
Best time of the
have, yeah, we have so much to talk about in terms of the season ending and who's going to be, going on to the playoffs and whatnot. But I think the first step we're going to do is we're going to talk about our power rankings going into the playoffs. So these are going to be the top 14 teams or the teams that are going to the playoffs. Um, but we're going to list our rankings, why we think that they're ranked as such, and give you a little bit of brief background on it all. So, Rob, do you want to start us out with who you have in your power rankings going into the playoffs, the teams that made it?
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to start at the bottom and build up to the top. Uh, all the way down at 14, I have the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's because they have not looked anything close to a playoff team the past month and a half. Ever since they got destroyed by San Francisco, they've been 1-5. Their defense is allowing over 30 points a game. The only defense that's allowed more points per game than the Philadelphia Eagles in that time frame is the Washington Commanders, who have the worst defense in football. Their offense has been inconsistent. They've been turning the ball over. I mean, I don't know how you can really expect them to beat anyone right now, never mind a playoff team. Uh, that being said, just above them at 13, I have the Buccaneers. They have looked better to end the season, but I just think Baker Mayfield, that's going to be kind of inconsistent on offense. I mean, what they scored 6 points, 9 points against the Carolina Panthers, who have one of the worst defenses in football. Their run defense is fantastic, mostly because they got a big old Vita Vea right there in the middle of their defensive line. But that's about all they got going for them. So I don't expect them to stick around too long. They're really the only team in the playoffs I think the Eagles have a realistic chance of beating. So they kind of lucked out with that being their first playoff matchup. Next, I've got the Steelers. The only reason I have them above the Eagles and the Buccaneers, they're not better at quarterback. They're not really better at wide receiver, but they're much better on defense. I think their defense is just fantastic, and they always seem to find a way to win. Evidenced by Mike Tomlin having, what is it, like 17 straight winning seasons now, which is just insane.
Has to be something like that. Yeah, crazy.
I can't. I have no idea how he managed to do that with guys like Mason Rudolph playing quarterback for him for many of those years. It's beyond me. Next, this might be a little low for them compared to how some people have them, but I have the Miami Dolphins. And it's because they're really banged up. They lost Jalen Phillips, they lost Bradley Chubb. I know Jalen Waddle's hurt right now, and Raheem Mostert. I don't know if Waddle or Mostert will be back for the playoffs. But even if you take out the injuries, this is a team that's only beat one winning team all year, and that was my Cowboys. And that game, really, the Cowboys should have won because they drove it down the field, were about to score a touchdown, which would have given them like a 28-22 victory, and fumbled the ball and let the Dolphins recover it on the 1 yard line. They just kind of got lucky. And that was in Miami, too, on the road where the Cowboys don't play well. And they didn't play well in that game, but it was still super close because Miami didn't play well either. And I think they're going to get exposed by the Chiefs in the first round of the playoffs and probably be eliminated. Then next, I have the Chiefs. I know this is kind of low for a team with arguably the greatest quarterback of our generation on it, but he doesn't really have anyone to throw the ball to. He does have a great defense. So anytime you pair an elite defense with an elite quarterback, you're going to have a chance. But no matter how great the throw Mahomes makes is, it doesn't really matter if there's no one there to catch it. That offense has been dysfunctional all year because of that exact problem. Then at number 9, this might be a little low for them. I kind of want to put them higher. I just don't know who to put lower so I can move them higher. I have the Green Bay Packers. The Packers offense has been on fire to end the season. I mean, Jordan Love over the past month and a half, 18 touchdown passes to only 1 interception, I believe, or maybe it's 2. Still amazing, like MVP level quarterback play over the last month and a half for Jordan Love. Aaron Jones has been over 120 yards for 3 consecutive games. It's the first time in Packers franchise history that's ever happened. Their offensive line is kind of banged up. Well, it's David Bakhtiari is out for the year. And outside of Bakhtiari, they don't really have any studs on that line. I guess the right tackle is pretty good. I forget what his name is, but they're stacked at wide receiver. Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, and Raul Dobbs. They're 4 really, really good wide receivers, really sticky and, very smooth. They have a great tight end, 2 great tight ends in Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. I am definitely worried about this Packers offense against my Cowboys defense in the wild card round. On the other side of the ball, their defense is not great outside of Rashawn Gary. I know they've looked good the past couple of weeks, but that's because they haven't really played any good offenses. So I fully expect the game on Sunday with my Cowboys to be a shootout for that reason. The Houston Texans, who I've got at number 8, I didn't know what to do with them because they've won so many games this year that I didn't expect them to win. CJ Stroud is amazing. And if he had his full complement of receivers and Dalton Schultz at tight end, I feel like I would have put them higher. But knowing he only has Nico Collins to throw the ball to, there's not really anyone else on that offense who can step up and be a real threat, I think. I think that offense will probably get pretty limited by some of these better playoff defenses. If he had his full complement of receivers, they'd be higher because I like the Texans defense. I like their head coach. They have a great quarterback. It's just they're so banged up at wide receiver. I can't put them any higher than number 8. At number 7, I have the Detroit Lions. The reason I have them so low is because every time they play a good team, it seems like they just make a lot of mistakes. It's not that they're not talented on both sides of the ball. They might be one of the most talented teams in the league on both sides of the ball. I mean, on offense, you got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams and Sam Laporta and, Jahmyr Gibbs at running back and great offensive line. And on defense, you have Aiden Hutchinson and Jack Campbell and some other guys on that defense who are pretty good. So they have a great roster. It just seems to me like come playoff time, much like my Cowboys for the past 27 years, they just kind of seem to crumble away. They make a lot of mistakes in big moments. And that's really the only reason my Cowboys beat them when they were in Dallas is because, they made the mistake of sending 3 guys up to report instead of just the 1 guy that they needed to, which I still don't understand what they were thinking there, but that's another topic for another day. At 6, at 6, I have the Rams. Um, they could even be higher on this list. Honestly, I'm very high on them. Their offensive line has been playing fantastic lately. Matt Stafford has been lights out to end the season. Obviously, you got Puka Nakua, who broke the rookie receiving record. Cooper Kupp, he's not triple crown receiver Cooper Kupp like he was a few years ago, but he's still pretty dang good. So that's two really good receivers you got on that offense with a great quarterback. And obviously, Kyron Williams, the running back there, fantastic. He kind of reminds me of Todd Gurley, which, perfect fit for the Packer system and the Sean McVay offense. And on defense, I'd say it's kind of weak overall, but having Aaron Donald and Kobe Turner together, forming that great tandem of like a rookie and like a savvy vet in his 30s, both of them absolutely dominant right now. It makes it hard for any offense to, be successful, even if the rest of their defense is kind of weak and has holes in it. So I think the Packers, or not the Packers, the Rams are going to be a tough out for whoever ends up playing them. And I could see them possibly even going all the way to the NFC Championship game. At 5, I have the Bills. The Bills are a weird team because their defense is fantastic and their offense at times can be elite, but at other times it can be really bad. It's pretty, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde offense. Like, you don't know what you're going to get. It all depends, I think, on Josh Allen. Is he going to be like the greatest quarterback of all time, or is he going to make like a really stupid throw? Uh, they could be number 1 when Josh Allen is playing like Josh Allen can. But then they could be number 10 when Josh Allen is, making dumb throws. And you're always going to get a combination of those two things. So that's why I put them at 5, because I felt like that's a nice middle ground, because it's always going to kind of be half and half. Half elite Josh Allen, half not so great Josh Allen. At 4, I have the 49ers. Now, that's a little controversial, I know, because I think everyone else in the world probably has them at 2 right now. But the reason I have them at 4 instead of 2 is because I think the 3 teams I have ahead of them are playing much better right now than they were throughout the season. And I think we haven't really seen the 49ers play these other teams in their current form outside of the Ravens, who I have ahead of them and who destroyed the 49ers. And I just think they're more complete teams than San Francisco right now, because San Francisco, they have one good offensive lineman, Trent Williams. The rest of their offensive line has struggled throughout the year. Brock Purdy is like 25th in time to throw, or time he has to throw behind his offensive line. He gets pressured very fast. He's been fantastic managing to get the ball off really quick to that elite receiver core he has, and George Kittle. And that's been pretty great for them. I think a lot of that's due to Kyle Shanahan. Obviously, McCaffrey has been amazing running the ball, even without that much room to run it. But I think having a weak offensive line is going to get them in some trouble against some of these better teams, the way it did with Baltimore. Purdy didn't have any time to throw against Baltimore. And I think their defense is weak in the secondary. They have Travarius Ward at corner, but outside of that, they're not really great. So if you can buy yourself time against that pass rush, I think you should be able to pick them apart. At number 3, I have the Cleveland Browns. And that's because you have an elite defense, arguably the best defense in football this year, paired with a great group of wide receivers, an offensive line that's not elite, but it's scrappy and it fights. And it's been doing a really good job buying Joe Flacco time, opening up running lanes. And then obviously, the centerpiece of that team, Joe Flacco, the Flacco Sans, as I've seen Rich Eisen say multiple times. That's
Yeah.
crazy to think about, that he's performing so well at 38 after, being a backup quarterback for the past 5 years. But he's amazing right now. And, part of that is probably because he has such great wide receivers and tight ends and a good offensive line and a great defense. But when you see a 38-year-old who hasn't really started for a team in however many years it's been, throwing for 300 yards in back-to-back-to-back games, that's just really impressive. And I think, he's won a Super Bowl before. That's something that really, outside of Mahomes, I don't think any other quarterback in the playoffs can say. And I think that experience is going to be really valuable down the road. And it's just a stacked roster from top to bottom. At number 2, I have the Dallas Cowboys. I know that might seem
Not biased at all.
no, no, no. I would never make a biased power rankings. Uh, the Cowboys have really been a different team since they got destroyed by the San Francisco 49ers in week 7. Their offense went from being the worst in the league to the best in the league in that time period. It was so efficient and scored so many points that they were able to end the year leading the league in regular season scoring after being like near the bottom of that list for the first 7 weeks. CeeDee Lamb has been the best receiver in the league since that point. He's first in catches, first in like third down catches, first and fourth down catches. He's just been amazing, tied for first in touchdowns, second in receiving yards. Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb are the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the league, in my opinion. Dak Prescott has been lights out. Leads the league in touchdown passes, only 9 interceptions. A lot of those advanced stats that you want to look at, like EPA or WAR, anything that like PFF does, any of those like advanced football stats guys, Dak like super high graded in all of those, super high QBR. I mean, he's just made amazing plays all season long, especially since week 7. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, obviously Micah Parsons is just the best pass rusher in football. He had over 100 pressures this year, led the entire league in that category. He also led the league in double team rate. For my money, he's the defensive player of the year. I know it's probably going to go to Myles Garrett, but and then at corner, you have Daron Bland, set the record for most pick sixes in a season. And then at left tackle, you have Tyrone Smith, who's been, playing like he used to when he was younger. And, he's playing at like a Hall of Fame level right now. So people always say those are the 5 most important positions in football: quarterback, wide receiver, left tackle, edge rusher, corner. And when you have arguably the best or one of the best players in the league at all 5 of those positions, I feel like you have a real chance to win the Super Bowl. Then at number 1, it really hurt my soul to put a team above the Dallas Cowboys, but I couldn't be honest with myself if I had any other team there. I have the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, they blew out the 49ers. They blew out the Dolphins. It's just they have been so utterly dominant really since about week 4, week 5 of the season. That defense is amazing, leading the league in sacks with really a lot of not no-name guys, but they don't have like a superstar on that defensive line. Like they got Justin Madubuike, who's the defensive tackle that's really good, got like 11 sacks or whatever. They have Jadeveon Clowney, who's like 33 now. They don't have a Micah Parsons or a Myles Garrett, and they still have been that successful at sacking the quarterback. That's just so impressive. And then obviously on the other side, you got Lamar Jackson, who's throwing the ball better right now than I think I've ever seen him. And that's probably got something to do with the fact that he has some really legit wide receivers now for the first time in his career. Odell Beckham Jr., Zay Flowers. I know he doesn't have his tight end anymore, Mark Andrews, but you factor in his running ability with the way he's been throwing the ball and that great wide receiver core. It's really hard to pick against the Baltimore Ravens now. Although if the Cowboys and the Ravens make it to the Super Bowl, I will be picking the Cowboys. So yeah, that's
Again, no bias
my
there at
no,
all.
no bias, just the facts. That's what we do here.
Of course, of course. Definitely no hint of bias whatsoever.
No, no, there would be no bias.
All righty. Well, there you have it for Rob's power rankings for the teams that have made it to the playoffs. We had some similarities, but we also had some differences. And I'll run through mine a little bit more quick than Rob's in-depth analysis on each team. But at number 14, the team that I kind of have, I think, going in with the least potential to win in terms of the team, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think a lot of it revolves around their defense, especially with the injury to TJ Watt. And I think Watt has had the most sacks this season. I think it's coming up to 19, I believe, is the number, most out of any player in the NFL. And losing him is going to really hurt the defense, especially when it comes to the pass rush. And so, when you're talking about a dominant defense without TJ Watt, I don't know how well the Steelers are going to stand up to a lot of these teams that I put ahead of them. And offensive wise, I know Mason Rudolph has been throwing, some pretty good footballs, scoring 30 some points for the Steelers in a couple games, which almost was unheard of for them at the beginning of the season. I just think in terms of his readiness for the playoffs, especially going up against a tough Buffalo team, I do think that the Steelers are probably going to be the least competitive team coming into the playoffs. That being said, at number 13, I do have the other number 7 seed in the Packers. And the Packers have been on and off all season. And I will agree with Rob. They certainly have turned it up the past couple games. And their offense has been slinging it. I'm loving what I'm seeing from Jordan Love. I just don't know if they have what it takes all around to go the distance. That's why I put them at 13. Number 12, I have the Eagles. And I don't have them as low as number 14 as Rob did. Maybe some of that cowboy bias coming back, but I do think they're pretty low on the list at 12. Um, for me too. And personally, I think a lot of what I've been seeing from the Eagles, um, successful season up until the last kind of 6 games where they've gone 1-5, and something just seems off when you're watching the Eagles play. And to be honest, I don't know if we as fans are ever going to know what's happening inside the locker room, inside the building. But I do think that there is some inner strife between players, coaching, front office, you name it. And of course, certain players have been pointing fingers to AJ Brown, pointing fingers to Jalen Hurts, pointing fingers to, whoever it may be, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. I've heard Eagles fans pretty much saying that, like, oh, well, we need to fire our offensive coordinator because he's doing high school plays. Obviously they're not running high school plays, but, there's a lot of animosity towards a lot of different elements of the team. And it doesn't seem like they're playing as a team. And I remember there was this one clip of Jalen Hurts in a post-game conference, and I could be absolutely wrong when this was, but I think it was when they lost to the Cardinals, or I don't remember. It was one of their most recent losses, though, where they were supposed to win, and he basically said that the team isn't confident in winning anymore. He has no confidence in the team, and I think that really shows, if there's no confidence in the locker room, even at the starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts, how is that going to really treat them in the playoffs? They're coming in at the 5 seed. They're going to be walking into Tampa Bay. Um, and roster wise, I do think that the Eagles are better than the Buccaneers, but still, I don't know how that chemistry is going to work out. So I've put them at 12. Another reason why they're at 12 too is there's a lot of uncertainty with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts injury wise. So there's one of your top receivers down. Is he going to play? I'm not sure. I've seen different things about Jalen Hurts' throwing fingers, and of course, if there's any injury, whether it's sprain or whatnot, that's going to affect him throwing the football. And so I don't know. I don't have that much confidence in the Eagles in this postseason. So I'm putting them at 12. Number 11, I have the team they're going to be facing, the Buccaneers. And I put the Buccaneers at 11 just because I think it's just so interesting. Sometimes the way analysts look at the league. And I remember last year they put the Seattle Seahawks as like the worst team, and they were going in with Geno Smith and Drew Lock, and everyone was like, they're not going to win many games. And then last playoffs, you find them in a wild card spot, and I think that kind of is the same reality with the Buccaneers, where people were like looking at Baker Mayfield, Kyle Trask, and they were trying to figure out, how is this roster going to succeed? And I know a lot of people put them pretty low in terms of how they would do in the season. I don't think many of them expected them to win the division, let alone get in a playoff spot. But here they are. And I think a lot of that has to do with Baker Mayfield actually playing some pretty good football. Now, I know that kind of contradicts myself with the last game that they played was it in Carolina? Did they play in Carolina?
Carolina, yeah.
Okay. And we saw 3 field goals, and that was it. What was that? Pretty boring game. The offense didn't seem to be
Terrible.
doing anything. Obviously, the defense kind of showed up. So I have them at 11 just because I don't know what team's going to show up. Are we going to see the team that Baker Mayfield's slinging the ball, defense playing great, scoring a lot of touchdowns, or are we going to see the team that played against the Panthers, know its divisional matchup in Carolina, but one of the worst teams in football in this season, honestly, all around, really. And they could only put up 3 field goals. So what team are we going to see? Number 10, I have the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm kind of I'm at a battle with myself where to put the Chiefs in this kind of power ranking list, and a lot of the reasons is kind of what Rob already mentioned. But I know not to bet out, Patrick Mahomes. He's arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the current season generation of us. Um, that's still playing multiple Super Bowls, but I think the problems in the team rely on who he's throwing it to. Of course, he has Travis Kelsey, and I don't want to shout out that guy's name too much because Taylor Swift is really popularizing his name more than we probably want. All the time we're watching Chiefs games, and who's next? Taylor Swift. Wow, it's almost like we care. We don't. I want to watch the football game. But anyways, Travis Kelsey's being locked down, and then you're like, well, who's at wide receiver? And a lot of times most people can't even name who's at wide receiver. And that's a problem. You may have a great generational talent quarterback, but if you can't throw the ball, and people can't catch it, or, and I hate to do this because Kadarius Toney's my boy. I love his music, Young Joka, but when he's stepping off sides, what are you doing, buddy? So if they can clean up those mistakes, if they can clean up some of the things, maybe maybe they'll make a splash in the playoffs and do well. But I have them at number 10 just because offensively they've struggled. Defense held up a little bit better than the offense, but what again? Same thing as I'm saying with the Buccaneers and the Eagles. What team's going to show up? Is it going to be the Patrick Mahomes we've always seen, and him leading the offense and to a stellar game, receivers finally catching balls, or is it going to be a misery, to watch? Just incompletions, drop passes, you call it. Anyways, all right, moving on to number 9. And I should probably state I do have some bias against the Houston Texans, but that's okay, because I'm going to try to be as unbiased as possible. We all know at number 9, I'm putting the Texans. CJ Stroud, honestly, probably been one of the better rookies this year, especially in this most recent draft class. Doing everything that he's supposed to do and more. Honestly, watching him play, I am very scared as a Titans fan moving forward with this guy as the most likely franchise quarterback for the Texans moving forward. Going to be a tough matchup for Tennessee moving forward, especially divisional wise. And honestly, and things I've even heard about him is he's doing things that he didn't even do in college. So you're already seeing him evolving into an NFL player, a top NFL quarterback, that is. And he's not just doing what he did in college, but he's improving. And I think that shows you something of long-term success. And for the Texans, I think that they are in a great spot in this playoff kind of games because they have that quarterback. The wide receivers have been showing up. Nico Collins have been playing great. Noah Brown, I believe, has been stepping up as well. Unfortunately, I do have them at 9 and probably not higher just because of some of those injuries that they've suffered. Tank Dell is probably the most popular name, and unfortunately is not going to be with the team moving through the playoffs. But even the defense has been playing well. Those two picks, Will Anderson Jr. and CJ Stroud, have balled out this season. It's crazy how well they've done. And Will Anderson has obviously crescendoed the later half of the season after a quiet kind of beginning of the season. But expect that Texans defense to be tough. But I have them sit at number 9 for now. At number 8, I have the Detroit Lions. Um, I have mixed feelings on this Lions team, really high on the offense, not so high on the defense. Of course, Aiden Hutchinson's there. I love him. Great generational talent player in the pass rush. Jack Campbell, also another shout out. I know Rob mentioned both of those names already, but stellar players on the defense. But it's just seemed this season that the Lions have let up, unfortunately, a lot of points defense wise. And I think that's going to be something to look for in this upcoming playoff matchup. How well is the defense going to hold up against some of these top teams now that it comes playoff time? Offensively wise, I do think that the Lions have obviously weapons. uh, an immense number. Whether you're talking running back David Montgomery, Jamar Gibbs, I think that's how you pronounce the first name. They have been great kind of running back duos. Jared Goff has been, for the most part, solid. There's been some interesting games, but I think that he'll probably keep his act together. Um, I think honestly the biggest unfortunate kind of event for the Lions is, are they going to have Sam Laporta with them while they go in the playoffs? I do know that he went down with an injury against the Vikings, I believe, in the last season game. Interested to see if he's going to be playing. I'm not sure if that's been even out yet, if he's not going to play or whatnot. But he's been a huge target for Goff this season. Rookie out of Iowa, playing great. I mean, a lot of people they call it tight end university, and you look around the league and how many Iowa tight ends are doing fantastic. Almost too many to count. I mean, that's not really true. But a lot of big names out there, whether it's Hawkinson, Kittle, Laporta, add that name to the list. So we'll see if Laporta actually plays with the Lions.
Update on that. He did not practice today, but he said he's
Okay.
optimistic about playing against.
Okay. So if Laporta goes in, I think this Lions team could be better on offense. I think without Laporta, it might struggle at the tight end position, but you still have St. Brown and some of those other high target receivers out there for them as well. So I have the Lions at number 8. Number 7, and this might be a shock to people who are putting the Dolphins a little bit lower on their list. I put the Dolphins at number 7, just honestly because there's a lot of still uncertainty with Raheem Mostert and Jalen Waddle in terms of their injuries. I believe they'll be back to play in this game. They've been out for, I think, a couple weeks at most. But I don't think I at least from what I've seen, it's not major injuries. So I do assume that they'll be back and playing. And maybe Rob, you can go check on that. And see for sure on what that officialness is on terms of their status and playing. I'm sure both of them are probably going to list the same thing: optimistic to play. Um, but
They're questionable. They were limited in practice today, so it seems like they have a good shot.
okay, so they have a good shot. I
Good
do.
shot.
I like this Dolphins offense. Honestly, the speed on this team is crazy. And I know that their season has been ups and downs. There's been, well, who have they really beat? Type sentiments. Um, but I do think, just if Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and even if Raheem Mostert doesn't play, um, is it Achan? Achan, is that how you pronounce the last name?
On HN.
Okay, yeah. He's a stellar running back as well. And just the speed on this offense, it's hard to shut down. And we've seen teams not do a great job of doing that. So in terms of the playoffs, I think that they're going to be a scary team, especially walking into Arrowhead playing against the Chiefs. But it's not just about that game. I think overall, I have them at the 7 spot just because their offense can do a lot of destruction. I know they've lost some key players on the defense, but they still have some powerhouses there still. So we'll see. But I have them at 7 for now. At number 6, I have the Cleveland Browns. Um, going back to Flacco Sans, a Rich Eisen term. I love it, but I have them a little bit lower than Rob did on his list, just because I think that there is still some uncertainty for me on the offense for the Browns. We've seen what the Browns defense has done all season, stellar, if not one of the top units in the league. And I think it's a Super Bowl caliber defense, and it can keep them in games. It can keep them even probably all the way to the Super Bowl, if you ask me. Some of those players are just bawling their hearts out, and it's great to see. Offensively wise, of course, Joe Flacco has the talent. He's been in this position multiple times, and I do think that the offense, has played some really stellar games the later half of the season. My question, I think, for them is, are they going to be able to keep with that momentum through the playoffs, or are they going to get stuck, shut down? Is Amari Cooper going to get double, triple teamed? How is uh um Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt going to do running wise? Are they going to be able to protect Joe Flacco? What if he gets hit? Some of those questions I think are good to kind of keep in mind with especially putting them at 6. Not that Joe Flacco's fragile, but he is an older quarterback. You would hate to see someone take a hit and get knocked out. But I do like the Browns. I like how they're playing. I think that they can be a top team, and that's why I have them at number 6. But the team I have above them is the LA Rams at number 5. And I really been loving what the LA Rams have been doing the past couple games, especially in the season. It seems like they've really turned it up. Cooper Cup, Puka Nakua, Kyrie Williams,
Kyron,
Kyron Kyron
Kyron, yeah.
Williams. Okay. I knew the last name. I was like, the first name does not sound right as soon as I said it. But Kyron Williams has been playing great football. It just seems like this Rams team is clicking in the later half of the season. And I honestly would be ready on upset alert, especially when they're heading into Detroit. I think this is a solid team all around, defense, offense. Matthew Stafford's combat veteran, knows how to do this. Won a Super Bowl for the Rams. This isn't his first rodeo. All around great talent. At number 4, and I may get booed out for this. I have the Dallas Cowboys.
Come
Now,
on.
I'll start off with the positives. Okay, before I get roasted. I'll start off with the positives. I think that this Dallas Cowboy team is probably one of the better ones that we have seen in the past number of years. And obviously, we all know Dallas Cowboys fans every single year say they're going to win it all. And what happens, folks? They do not. But I think this year and this roster, they probably have the best shot. I'm liking how Dak Prescott has been playing. Um, I think going into this season, I think the question around him was how many interceptions is he going to throw? Because he really struggled with those for the past couple seasons, and he's done so much better in terms of protecting the ball. Obviously, he's not been perfect, but he has upheld at least that promise on that end. So he's been playing some good football. CeeDee Lamb is probably, if I have to sit here right now, probably one of the best wide receivers in the NFL as we speak right now. I know it didn't start out that way. How are you going to guard a man like that? He just always seems to be open. He's gets shifted around, so he's never that one receiver. It's just been a huge target for Dak Prescott. And so I think the success of this team, an offense wise, really lies on CeeDee Lamb. And if he can perform as well as he's been doing these past number of games, this offense might be almost unstoppable. On the defensive side of the ball, obviously Micah Parsons has been, you know, a great player defensively, always getting at the quarterback. Pass rush is important. And so I think this Cowboys team is going to be tough, especially going into some of these tough playoff games. And we all know as well that, they have home field advantage. And pretty much they have home field advantage until they will play the 49ers. If it gets there, they could as very well go all the way to the Super Bowl playing at home. And we know of how good the Cowboys have been playing at home. Are they undefeated still at home this season?
16
Yeah.
straight wins at home.
So that's a dangerous unit at home, especially when you have the home crowd backing them. And how many points they've been able to put up at home is, I think, also a big thing to kind of notice as well. So I think this team's going to be tough to beat, especially at home. And that's why I have them at 4. 49ers, I have at 3. And I think, I couldn't put them any lower than the Cowboys. And I know the 49ers really beat up on the Cowboys, but not necessarily for that reason. I just think all around the 49ers have one of the most complete rosters. And I know Christian McCaffrey is still, I believe, questionable on if he's going to play. But still, leaving him out, I mean, Deebo Samuel is just, he's much more than just a wide receiver. He pretty much does it all. Brandon Ayuk is another splendid just duo with Deebo Samuel, almost unstoppable. It always seems to be open. How do you cover guys like that? And Brock Purdy, say what you will about this guy, but he seems to be throwing it pretty well. And I know that there was that hiccup in the game against the Ravens. Didn't look too hot. A lot of people are going to probably point to it and be like, "Look, the 49ers are just frauds." He's just a system quarterback. He can't do much. But you can't really just take one game and base that on how a team is. I mean, if you watch his play throughout the entire season, he's doing things that most quarterbacks aren't. The way he's seeing the field, the coverages, and I think a lot of people will point to that game against Baltimore and be like, "Well, they're not a really good team." It's one game. This is the playoffs. They're obviously going to be playing at a much higher level. Not that they weren't playing at a high level against Baltimore when they unfortunately lost pretty bad there at the Bay in the Bay. But I do think this team is scary. It's very complete. I do have some concerns on the secondary in terms of their defense. But all around, I do think that they're a pretty solid team, tough to beat. But my number two team is going to be the Buffalo Bills. And I know that might be a little controversial. And I am in no way a Bills fan. So I'm not putting them there because I love them. Uh, the reason I'm putting them there is because of how well they've been playing football recently. And I know that they have had a little hiccup in a close game against the Chargers more recently than not. But even in that game, really well executed offensively wise. Josh Allen has been playing much better than how he started off the season, and it just seems like this team is in a roll. And this team has been rolling and rolling, and now they're in the playoffs. And I know Rich Eisen even said multiple times on his show, don't let this team in the playoffs because if you let the Bills in the playoffs, it's going to be scary. And I really agree with that sentiment. And there's something that's going on, and especially with being the 2 seed, home field advantage, unless they're going to be playing the Ravens, that's a hostile environment to play in. Not only is it going to be cold, as it's winter and it's playoff football and it's outdoors, but you're going into the Bills Mafia, and they're such a crazy fan base, and they make home games almost players dread going to those games in Buffalo, just with how hostile that environment is. Not impossible, but I think the Bills are going to be one of these tougher teams to play. But I will agree with Rob. Really, I think rests on the shoulders of what will we see of Josh Allen? You know, this team really seems to be on Josh Allen's shoulders. If he does well, the team does well. If he flounders, how good is the Bills team actually going to be this year or going into the playoffs? So I think that's something to keep our eye on. But with the way he's playing now, there's no doubt in my mind that this is going to be a tough team to beat, and that's why I have him at number two. Number one, same as Rob, I have the Baltimore Ravens. I think it would be foolish not to put the Ravens at number one just with how well they've been playing, how complete of a roster they have, weapons almost everywhere. Kyle Hamilton at the safety position, outstanding playing wise. And Lamar Jackson, probably the best that we've seen him play. Um, MVP caliber, he probably already locked it in terms of that. It's just how he's been playing football. And there's just so many weapons. Zay Flowers has been a great pickup for them this year in that rookie. Roquan Smith, in terms of tackles on the defense, he's been almost, hitting almost everybody. And something to keep your eyes on as well. So I'll put the Ravens at number one, and that will be my top 14 in terms of power rankings wise of the NFL playoff teams.
Here, I got a question for you, Carson.
Okay.
Which team on my power rankings did you disagree with the most? Like which team spot?
Okay. I will say, let's look at them. I think I will go with the Dolphins. I think you put them, you had the Dolphins at number 11.
Yep.
And I think that's a little low for them in terms of their offensive capabilities. And we've seen them playing games where it's working. and we've also seen them playing games where it's not. But I do think at 11 it might be a little bit too low. I know that you put the Packers and the Chiefs above them, and I'm I just feel like they should be higher on the list. How about you?
Well, if they had home advantage going into the playoffs, I think I would have had them higher because
That's
they
true.
are so much better on offense in their building than they are
That's
anywhere
true.
else. And the fact that they're going
Yeah.
to be playing in cold weather on the road, I feel like
Mm,
that is really the only thing that can slow those guys down. When it's cold, when you can't throw the ball well, when your speed isn't as big of an advantage as it has been all season, that's really all they have is speed. They don't have
yeah.
size, they don't have strength. They can run the ball okay, but I mean, with the speed that they have, uh, in terms of throwing the ball, they're not going to be able to do it very well in Kansas City, I don't think. Uh,
Yeah.
if they had like the first seed or the second seed, and I thought they were going to play all these teams in Miami, I probably would have had them a little higher.
Okay. That's perfectly sense. I actually do agree with that too. Going in without that home field advantage, you're not playing in Miami. A lot of these, I mean, the Buffalo's the number 2 seed. You have the Chiefs at 3. So I mean, Texans, I guess, is the only, and the Texans, don't they play in a dome too? I'm pretty sure in Houston.
Actually, no. And
Or
I field is a dome
yeah,
or
but
not.
still, I guess that's a little bit warmer climate. But
Definitely.
Baltimore's also cold. So yeah, you're absolutely right. They're going into a hostile environment in terms of weather wise, and I would agree. Yeah, if anything's slowing down their speed, I think it will be cold. Yeah.
Uh, let me tell you the team I disagree with most on your list.
Okay.
That would probably be the Packers. I
Okay.
think the Packers are very underrated right now. When you have a quarterback who throws for 30 something touchdowns to only a few interceptions in a season, I feel like you have a chance against anyone because, what's the
Yep.
most important position? It's quarterback. When you have a guy playing at that level, uh, you can outscore any team that you go up against. Now, I know their defense is terrible, and I know he hasn't proved he can do it against good teams, and he hasn't proved he can do it in the playoffs. And those are obviously two really big questions I have about him, which is why they're as low as they are. But
Hmm.
for me, it's hard to put any team that has a quarterback playing at that level that low.
Yeah. And I would definitely agree with that. They have certainly been playing better, especially Jordan Love has been playing in extraordinary football. I think I put them that low just because the questions of, well, how is Jordan Love going to do in the playoffs? And we have seen him struggle in games as well. Of course, those statistics, touchdown to interception, that's certainly high. But I felt like this Packers team has also struggled in a lot of different games this season on offense, and they've had some troubles getting it going. And I think that's why I put them a little bit lower on the list. Maybe they should be a little higher. Um, and because just on the ability, I mean, quarterback's one of the most important positions on the football field. So you have that obviously going for you in terms of Jordan Love being able to um, have ball security. But I don't know. I think it's just I think the uncertainty of how well this team's going to do in the playoffs. I think that's why I put them a little lower.
I'll give you this. They did just lose to the Giants 3 weeks ago. So I can see
Yeah.
why you have them that low. I forgot they lost to the Giants that recently.
Yeah. So it's been a little inconsistent.
Yeah.
But again, you know, I always say this, but any of these teams that make it to the playoffs, if you get a ticket to the dance, you can win it. You can win it all. It
Anything can
doesn't
happen.
matter your record. It doesn't
Sure.
matter how well you played in the season. I mean, kind of it does, but not as much. Like, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Packers going far. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Eagles somehow getting their team together and making a run. So these power rankings, we could have them all wrong. We could have them all right. But
Yeah.
it's something always interesting to watch. But yeah, they did lose against the Giants, and I think there was a couple games even when they played the Vikings where they were just struggling. I know it's a divisional matchup, but yeah, just had some trouble getting going.
It's tough because they beat the Lions the week before they lost to the Giants. So it's like
Yeah,
they can beat a playoff team, but then lose to, Danny DeVito. It's a really
yeah.
interesting conundrum there.
Exactly. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Alrighty. So let's move in. We're still talking about the playoffs. We're still talking about this, but we're gonna zoom in on the Super Wild Card weekend. Um, 2 games Saturday, three Sunday, one on Monday. Um, and we're gonna kind of break down our projections for each of these games. That's gonna be going on, and we're gonna break it down by conference. Rob, if you want to start us off, what do you think about the Bills Steelers game? The number 2 Bills versus the number 7 Steelers.
I think this game is going to be a lot closer than people expect because the Bills have an infinitely better roster than Pittsburgh does right now. But the Steelers have a way of just making games close that should not be close. Mike Tomlin is a football genius, and he just manages to make his team competitive no matter what. Going in there with Mason Rudolph at quarterback versus Josh Allen at quarterback in Buffalo, you're like, the Steelers should get blown out. They should be beat 40-0. That's what should happen. But what I think is going to happen is going to be a really low scoring game. It's going to be like 20-17 or something along those lines. And I think Buffalo will squeak out a win just because they're so much better in terms of their roster. But I think it's going to be a nail biter.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think Mike Tomlin's crew, they always keep it close. How he keeps having a winning record after season after season after season. It's something to keep in mind. The way he motivates this team to do better than what the roster looks like. I think it's crazy. I do think that loss of TJ Watt is going to hurt them, and I think that's going to 100% be their Achilles heel in this matchup. I don't know how well their pass rush is going to do without TJ Watt. A lot of that also had to do with, oh, well, we got to block TJ Watt. But wait, here comes these other guys coming in, to hit the quarterback. Now TJ Watt being done and not playing. How often are those guys going to be able to get to Josh Allen? And I do think another thing to keep in mind too is that it is in Buffalo. This is winter. It's up there. There probably could even be snow. Obviously Pittsburgh is not too unfamiliar with hostile environments in terms of winter weather. But the Bills obviously playing it up in New York, way more often than the Steelers do. So I do think you are correct. I will say that and agree with you that the Bills will probably win this game, but I do think it will be close, like you said as well. Yeah. Alrighty. Chiefs versus Dolphins. The number 3 Chiefs versus the number 6 Dolphins.
I don't think this one is going to be particularly close. I think it's going to be what is it, -9 degrees is what the forecast is right now.
I think
In
so.
Arrowhead, I think the Chiefs are going to beat the Dolphins. I don't think it's going to be high scoring again because the Chiefs' offense has kind of been a problem area all year, but their defense is elite. And what did they hold the Dolphins to last time they played them? Like 10 points, something along those lines.
Yeah,
Uh,
something like that.
and the Dolphins might not have Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert. I know they're probably going to play, but uh, even if they do, last time when the Dolphins were fully healthy and had Tyreek and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert, they could not move the ball against this Kansas City defense. And that was on a more neutral field. That was in Germany.
Hmm.
In Arrowhead, in the freezing cold, I would be shocked if Miami goes in there and manages to move the ball. I think their only chance is to make it like an extremely, defensive game, uh, incredibly low scoring, which they have the ability to do because they have good players in the secondary. So with those like really bad wide receivers and Travis Kelce not being as good as he was, they could make it close, but I don't expect it to be. I think the Chiefs are going to win pretty easily.
I'm actually going to disagree with you here on this one. And I do know that obviously I think the weather is going to be a problem for the Dolphins. I just don't think the Chiefs are going to get moving. And we've kind of seen the past couple games this offense just sputtering and just not going anywhere. And I hate to bet against Patrick Mahomes, and I'm probably going to eat my words, but I do think that this the Chiefs on offense, you know, I think it's going to be pretty easy for the Dolphins to shut down these receivers. And I think it's probably going to be a low scoring game, just offensively wise for the Chiefs. I don't know how many points they're going to be able to put up on the board, just with some of their offensive struggles. that we've seen recently in some of their past kind of games leading up to the playoffs. The Dolphins, on the other hand, I maybe leaning into the bias a little bit more, this Tyreek Hill revenge game in Arrowhead. But I do think he's going to go off. I think he has something to show, something to prove. I think he's going to maybe probably not going to be unstoppable, but I think he's going to be all over the place. And I do think that connection with Tua and Hill, even if Jalen Waddle doesn't play or Raheem Mostert, I do think that they have still the weapons that it takes to still drive the ball down the field. So. I know they played in Germany and it wasn't that close of a game. But they have played each other. So at least the Dolphins are familiar with the Chiefs. And, I wouldn't put it past Mike McDaniels to, build up some uh, interesting scheme that no one's probably ever seen before to kind of get by this Chiefs defense. So we'll see. Maybe I have too much faith in the young coach, but he's been able to do some crazy things this season, even borderline reckless. So maybe his recklessness will get him the win. But I do think the Dolphins will upset the Chiefs in Arrowhead, um, even despite the cool weather. I think Taylor Swift is going to curse the Chiefs. So that's what I'm going to go with.
Let me ask you
Alrighty,
this. This will be the lowest scoring game this weekend.
the Chiefs versus the Dolphins.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with no. I'm going to go with no. I don't think it's going to be the lowest scoring game. I think we're going to see the Dolphins pop off. That's what I think.
I think it's between this game and the Eagles Bucks game. Those are the two I'd have as the lowest scoring.
Interesting. Yeah, I would 100% agree with the Eagles Bucks. I would put them lower actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Alrighty. Moving on to the last game in the AFC, we have the number 4 Houston Texans and facing the number 5 Cleveland Browns. What do you think?
Okay, that is a tough one. Those are two really good
It
teams.
is.
Uh, man, CJ Stroud is playing better than Joe Flacco right now.
Mhm.
But CJ Stroud only has one healthy wide receiver. Noah Brown's hurt. Nico Collins is hurt. I think Dalton Schultz
Mhm.
might even be hurt, but I'm not sure about that one. Um, if it was just CJ Stroud versus any other defense besides the Browns defense, I think I'd be picking the Texans in this one. But because it's
Mhm.
CJ Stroud, a rookie, making his first playoff start against the best defense in football, I think I have to go with the Browns. Now, that's not to say the Texans can't win this game because I think they're two very talented teams. And as long as you have a quarterback like Stroud, you're always in it. Uh, but I think the Browns are going to manage to shut down the Texans offense and pull this one out.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would 100% agree. Um, I think it's tough to call this game too, just because we've seen kind of the worst of kind of both teams. And now a lot of them are getting some of their players back healthy. I think a lot of people are going to go with, counting the Texans out just because of Flacco Sans, and he's going to come in and he's like the old guy that got called off the couch. That kind of story. Um, I think it's going to be a very big defense game. I think a lot of it rests on how well the Browns defense does against CJ Stroud and the offense of the Texans. Because I think that's really where the big battle is going to be. Can they shut down CJ Stroud? Him being a rookie, him being first time playing in a playoff game, which is, crazy for a rookie to do, lead a team to a playoffs his first year. Um, it's just I think it's going to be one of those tough matchups for him, one of the tougher ones. And the Texans did play the Browns this season, and they did lose to the Browns 36-22. Um, and I know that wasn't with everybody, and there was certainly some questions, but I do think we're probably going to see a similar game. I think the Browns are going to beat the Texans. I think their defense is going to be able to control Shroud for the most part. I wouldn't say it's probably going to be as high as 36-22. As the season game was. But I do think both teams are going to play great. They're going to play their hearts out. I think the Browns will have the edge just because CJ Stroud is, this is his first playoff game, rookie quarterback. And I just do think the Browns defense is gonna show up in many ways in this game.
I'll tell you what, if CJ Stroud does beat the Browns, if he goes in there as a rookie quarterback in his first playoff start and beats the best defense in football, that might be the most impressive performance by a quarterback this season. I just
Absolutely.
that would be so impressive for him to do that.
Yeah, it really would. It really would. And I can absolutely see the Texans beating the Browns as well.
For sure.
If Joe Flacco doesn't show up, because I mean, we've seen him play football as, with the Jets, with some of these other teams as backup quarterbacks. And for some reason, him playing for the Browns, something seems to have clicked. But I guess my question is, especially for the Browns, is he going to revert back to that Jet quarterback that took the field a couple times and did not look great?
Right.
Is he going to show up like the quarterback he's been playing for the past couple games in the season? Another good question is, is there enough tape on him now playing in the Browns uniform for some of these defensive coordinators to shut him down? So we'll see. We'll see. I do still am taking the Browns in this pick, but I could absolutely see CJ Stroud lighting it up, everyone
Sure.
going crazy. And especially in Houston, you know, home crowd. I don't think they haven't won the division since 2019. And it could be a good game either way. But I'm still taking the Browns. Still taking the Browns.
Yeah. This honestly feels like the only game in the AFC to me that's really a true coin toss. I feel like it could go either way,
Yeah,
and I wouldn't be surprised.
I do agree. Even though we have separate sides for the Chiefs and Dolphins, but we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. We'll see how it all plays out.
You
All
certainly
righty,
shall.
moving on to the NFC. So we're gonna kind of follow that same seeding pattern, but we're gonna have we all know obviously the answer to this one that Rob's gonna give, but we have the number 2 Cowboys versus the number 7 Packers. All right, Rob, give us
No.
your most unbiased take here.
All right. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm actually very nervous for this game. The Cowboys secondary is not good. Deron Bland has been fantastic, but they have struggled to cover all year. If you look at a lot of the games we lost, it's because there were just wide open receivers running past our corners and our safeties, especially our safeties. They have not covered well all season long. Uh, the problem is that we play a lot of man coverage because Dan Quinn is just super aggressive. And if you leave our corners and our safeties in man on some of these really talented receivers and tight ends, they're going to get open if you don't get home with the pressure. Thankfully, I think the Packers' offensive line is not great, and our defensive front is great. So I think we should be able to pressure Jordan Love. But I really think that's our only chance of stopping the passing game because these wide receivers the Packers have are for real. They have 4 really good wide receivers. I don't think there's any other team in the league that can say they're as deep at wide receiver right now as the Packers or tight end for that matter. Because Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft are both just insanely talented. I think it's going to be a shootout for that reason. I think the Packers are going to score a lot of points, but the Packers defense is also really bad outside of Rashawn Gary. So I think the Cowboys offense should move the ball. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. It's indoors. I think in Jerry World, it's always high scoring there. It'll probably end up with a score of something like Cowboys 35, Packers 28, or something along those lines. Maybe even a little higher than that. I think Aaron Jones is going to go over 100 yards. I think Jordan Love will have at least 300 yards passing. I think it'll be really close. I'm very nervous. The Packers have broken my heart the last 2 times we played them in the playoffs. Even when we had a better team and we were at home, 2016, we were the first seed, the best team in the league, the best record. They marched in there and they knocked us out in the divisional round. So I'm definitely not taking this game for granted like a lot of Cowboys fans are. I could definitely see them winning. I think it's going to be very close. I'm going to be having a heart attack the whole time, and I'm going to ultimately pick the Cowboys to win, but it's going to be close.
Yeah, I would agree with everything pretty much you said. I do agree that I think the Cowboys are going to win it. I think, you know, something that sets the team a little bit apart from some of those previous losses to the Packers in playoff history is, I mean, I don't know if I've seen a better kind of Cowboys team playing this season, especially on offense. So that being the case, and especially you line that up with being at home, they've been almost perfect at home offense wise. Not obviously, but played very, very well. So um, I am kind of scared about the um, Packers and their offense. We covered their wide receivers, their tight ends. Dallas Cowboys kind of struggle on the defense side of the ball in terms of their secondary safeties. You know, um, but I do really think that the Packers defense is going to be the nail in the coffin for them. I don't know how they're going to be able to stop CD Lamb, Dak Prescott, Tony Pollard, some of these weapons, it's gonna be tough. And teams have struggled even that are better than the Packers on defense to cover some of these guys. So I think that those are going to be kind of the keys to the game. Can the Packers cover these guys? Can they lock them down? If not, I think the game's going to be running away from them, because I do think the Cowboys defense is good enough to get some stops. I think Micah Parsons is able to get to the quarterback a couple times in this game. And so if the Packers can't keep toe to toe with the Cowboys, I think that's going to keep them behind in the game. And I don't think they will. I don't think they're going to keep toe to toe with the Cowboys. So I think they're going to fall behind, and I think that that's going to be ultimately their downfall, defensively, especially in the Cowboys' home. So I'm going to pick the Cowboys. I do think it's going to be high scoring. I don't know how close it's going to be, actually. I think it's going to be not as close as you think. But
From your mouth to God's ear. I hope it's a blowout for the.
this might reverse history against the with the Cowboys Packers feud when it comes to the playoffs. So,
Well, you know what? Today is the 9-year anniversary of the Des Bryant catch. So it
wow.
really is about time we turn this ship around and actually, beat the Packers in the playoffs.
Well, we'll see. I think they are. I think they are going to do it this year.
I hope
Um,
so.
if not, I guess Rob, you'll be on suicide watch. So, but that's
Yes.
okay. We'll make sure you're okay, and of course, we'll be on here to do another one of these podcasts. So we'll get to hear all about it. I'm sure.
You're
I'm
keeping me
sure.
going with this podcast.
All right. So moving on to the next game in the NFC, we have the number 3 Lions facing off against the number 6 Rams.
Oh man, I am so excited for this game. It's probably the game I'm the most excited for outside of the Cowboys
Same.
game. Matt Stafford is, coming back to Detroit. The first playoff game in that stadium, and Matt Stafford's playing, but it's not for the Lions. That's just such a crazy storyline. Jared
Yep.
Goff against his old team. I mean, this is just the most dramatic game you could have possibly imagined for the first round of the playoffs. Um, oh man, it's so tough to pick because I think these are just two really good teams. Detroit's at home, which I think gives them a little bit more of an edge on offense than they otherwise would have had. But, I watched CeeDee Lamb just destroy their secondary for over 220 receiving yards. With Puka and Cooper Cup and the fact that they're going to have to try and load the box a little bit to stop Kyren Williams in the run game, I think Matt Stafford is going to take over this game and throw for a ton of yards. I think the Lions will probably move the ball really well on offense. Again, I think this is going to be a shootout. I expect a lot of points on both sides, but I think Matt Stafford's just experienced. Jared Goff went to a Super Bowl, but Matt Stafford is just, the more experienced quarterback. He's the better quarterback. And then a shootout, I always go with the better quarterback. So I will be going with Matt Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams.
Had a little brain fart there.
I almost said Detroit Lions. I almost said Matt Stafford and the Detroit Lions. Wait a minute, no, not anymore.
Did you see that there was I believe, was it, I forget which family member, but people were going to be upset at people wearing Matthew Stafford Lion jerseys to the game.
They banned it.
Yeah, yeah, they banned it, exactly. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy to me. That kind of like, and imagine how this all fits together in the realm of like coincidence. That you have Matt Stafford, played for the Lions how many years, couldn't get it going, goes to the Rams, wins the Super Bowl. Now he's back in the Lions' house. In how long? 93? Was it 93 the last time they went to the playoffs?
Not the last time
93,
they
I
went to the
think.
playoffs, but the last time they had a home playoff game was
Oh,
1990.
yes. Nine. Okay.
In 2014 was the last time they were in the playoffs and they lost to the
Yeah,
Cowboys.
that's right. That's right. But the last time they had a home game. Um,
Before the NFC North even existed, it was called the NFC Central then, I think.
wow. So it's been a
Yeah.
while, of course. So It's going to be interesting. And unfortunately, I've loved watching the Lions play. I think they're going to choke in this game. I think that, the Rams are going to take it over. I agree with Rob that, Matthew Stafford is going to throw for a lot of yards. Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are going to go off. Williams is going to run it down their throat. I just don't believe in this Lions defense. Despite some of the playmakers they have, watching CD Lamb run all over them, not to just repeat, but and through countless games this season, it seems like this defense hasn't shown up. Will they show up? We're going to see. But I do think that they're going to choke away this game, which is going to be very unfortunate for Lions fans. And unfortunately, I might get crucified by Lions fans for saying that. But hopefully y'all prove me wrong. But I do think that the Rams are the better team out of the two on both sides of the football, and I do think that they're going to win this football game.
Yeah, I tell you what, as a Cowboys fan, I also have a rooting interest in this because if the Rams win, then we get to play the winner of the Bucks Eagles game rather than the Lions in the second round of the playoffs. And I would much rather play the Buccaneers or the Eagles than the Lions. So I'll be rooting very hard for the Rams if the Cowboys manage to not get eliminated by the Packers.
Can you imagine Can you imagine a playoff game between the Lions and the Cowboys, especially with all the drama that went down and the amount of people that have been all over social media? And you know what? We're not going to get into the deep of what happened. What do we think? But the amount of people that I've heard is like, oh, it's rigged. Oh, the Cowboys they stole the game, all this stuff. How much of that are we going to hear if they play each other in the playoffs leading up
It'll
to
be
that game?
nonstop. It'll be
It'd be
non.
nonstop.
That's all the Lions fans are going to talk about. It'll be all the national media will talk about. And I tell you what, that would probably be the scariest thing for me as a Cowboys fan because that Lions team is going to be so motivated to come in there and avenge that loss they had at the hands of the 2 point conversion controversy. That would be probably the worst possible matchup for the divisional round that I could imagine. So I've been rooting very hard for the Rams to go in there and take care of the Lions for us, so we don't have to worry about them in the divisional round.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that Lions team's going to come to eat if they are squaring off against the team that they think they should have rightly won against.
That will
Um,
be their Super Bowl. If they win that game against the Cowboys, they will
yeah,
celebrate like the Super Bowl. There's not a doubt in my mind.
absolutely. I agree. I agree. And I should probably say I do think that those officials something has to be done with that because obviously we weren't on the field, so we don't know the ins and outs of everything that was said and what went down. But especially with that, it just seemed like he was not fully aware of what was going on.
The worst part is that whole thing wouldn't have happened if they hadn't incorrectly called the tripping call on the Cowboys on the previous drive. Because the
Yeah.
Cowboys were about to take the ball, run the clock out, and the game would have been over. But then they called a tripping call on Tony Pollard after Aiden Hutchinson tripped a Cowboys player. Which is why would Tony Pollard trip his own player? That wouldn't even make any sense. And that's
Yeah.
partially what gave the Lions a chance to come back in the first place. So you had two really bad calls in really critical moments within the span of like 10 minutes of each other in the same game. And it's just really scary to think that that's, the refereeing we're going to have in the playoffs. Although I don't think that crew is allowed in the playoffs this year. I don't think
No,
Brad
they
Allen
have been
is
banned. Yeah.
good,
They
as
they're
they
not
should.
they're not playing. Yeah.
Those were two
Which is
really
good.
bad calls to have in the game. It was
They were.
atrocious.
And I'm never going to be the person that stands up and says the NFL is rigged because I just don't believe that physically can even be possible until obviously hardcore evidence. But, I will agree that there has been some bad officiating this year and
Terrible
bad
officiating.
calls.
The worst it's ever been.
Yeah. Bad calls
So
in big moments.
they're deciding games more than the players are, and it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. So I hope that there's something moving forward that can kind of maybe help with this. Something I believe that they should incorporate in the league is, I know you can challenge plays, but I think you should challenge calls on the field. And I
They
think
had
that would,
they had that for 1 year. They made it like an experimental rule, and it was so good. It saved so many dumb penalties from happening. But
yeah,
they got rid of it.
they
It
got rid.
upset me so much that they didn't keep it after that.
Yeah. And I know they even, we'll get to this. soon. But in the spring football leagues that started up, I forget if it was the USFL or if it was the XFL, but one of the leagues you could challenge the calls. Um,
Yeah, I
and
forget what team that was.
I forget if it was XFL or USFL. It doesn't matter, but they had that rule and it seemed to work seamlessly for them. So, I hope the NFL can incorporate that hopefully next season, but we'll
The
see.
only reason that they got rid of it, I think, is because it made the games a little longer. There was like more commercial breaks, and they were trying to make a more marketable product. So they were trying to have less
That would make
delays.
sense.
But I think by having these dumb penalties decide games, you're having a much worse product than you would if you just had an extra 30-second break every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All righty. All right. Zooming back in after that brief tangent of bad refereeing and hopefully an end to that. Bad calls deciding big games. But we're probably going to be moving. Well, we're going to be moving on to the last wild card weekend game, which will actually be on Monday night. But it's in the last game of the NFC. It's going to be between the number 4 Buccaneers versus the number 5 Eagles. What do you think, Rob? Your unbiased opinion.
No, this is tough because you were talking during your power rankings about how the Buccaneers like won the division and no one would have expected them to do that. But the only reason they won their division is because their division was terrible. They were playing against a bunch of really bad teams. So 6 of those wins came against, the 2 and whatever Carolina Panthers, the barely
Yeah,
above 500 New Orleans Saints, and the terrible Atlanta Falcons. Although I think the Falcons might have beat them once or twice,
yeah,
but still, a lot of their wins came against their divisional opponents. I think their record is inflated just because of how terrible of a division they are in right now. I think they're probably more like a 7-10 team, or even like a 6-11 team, than a team that's 500 or better. But the Eagles are they're right now they're playing like a 1-5 team. The Eagles right now are playing like a team that would, if you projected it over a season, would go like maybe 3-14. So even though both of these teams I think are really bad, I'm gonna say the Buccaneers have the slight edge, especially since they're playing at home. And the Eagles secondary has been just so terrible. And the Buccaneers can throw it to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and all their guys that they have. And they've shown the ability to do that, at least in a few games this year. Meanwhile, the Eagles, I don't think the Buccaneers defense is particularly good at stopping the pass, but the Eagles just can't throw it. They've shown over the past month and a half of football that no matter who you line up opposite them, they're still going to struggle to be able to throw the football. And, that's for a lot of reasons. It's for coaching, it's for injuries, maybe player regression could be a part of it. But the Eagles cannot throw, and they're not going to be able to run against that Buccaneers defense. So they're not going to be able to score a lot, if at
yeah.
all. And their defense is terrible. So I think the Bucs should move it pretty easily, and I think they'll have an edge because they're at home. So I think the Buccaneers are going to win pretty handily, even though they're both teams that really shouldn't be in the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that that's very clever because I mean, yeah, the Buccaneers really, who have they played? I know in the season they lost to the Eagles. I believe it was like 25-11 or something like that. So they have played the Eagles. But I think you're absolutely right. And when it comes to, who have they really beaten? Especially in a division that is honestly probably the worst in the NFL as a whole. The NFC South is unfortunately not a great place if you're a fan of any of those teams. So I do, but it's just such a tough matchup too because we've seen the Eagles play great football, but then recently we haven't, and we don't know when that's going to turn around the corner. And with AJ Brown going down, questions and Jalen Hurts, is he going to be playing or is Marcus Mariota going to be starting? And I know as a Titans fan, Marcus Mariota uh, played some decent football and then has played not so decent football. So, if Mariota's taking the field, is Hurts taking the field? I think there's just a lot of questions right now with this Eagles team. And also like what is going on with the team? How do you start off such a successful season and then lose 5 out of the 6 of your last games, and to also opponents that are not anything to rave about? So I don't know. Uh, I think it's going to be a close matchup. I think it's going to be probably the least scoring. out of all of these games. But I think I'm going to pick the Buccaneers. I think Baker Mayfield is going to be playing because he wants to prove people wrong. And I think that that's going to be a weapon on his side. A lot of people have counted him out this season. But he's got some weapons. Um, so I wouldn't be surprised to see the Buccaneers cutting it up against the Eagles. How well their defense is going to stand up against the Eagles offense, there's a lot of question marks on the Eagles offense. So I don't know. But I'm going to go with the Buccaneers. I do think that overall, I think that they're going to be able to beat this Eagles team that, is kind of going through some inner strife. And honestly, the Eagles kind of remind me of, I believe it was the 1993 Oilers. And because they had, I mean, it could be the 94. So I might be mistook on the year. But either way, they had a loaded roster, but the um, conflict within made them lose. And I think that this you're kind of seeing a repeat with the Eagles. So unless they're able to figure out whatever's been going on these past couple games, whether from the coaches, players, you name it, um, you know, we'll see if they turn around this game. But since I haven't seen it yet, I'm going with the Buccaneers, and I do think that they will advance past the Eagles.
Yeah, I mean, a house divided against itself cannot stand. There's definitely been a lot of locker room controversy. At least that's what it seems like. I know the players have come out and been like, "Yeah, there's nothing going on. It's just a big story the media is talking about." But just the way they act, you can see that there's something wrong there. Whether that's
Mhm.
between the coaches and the players, or the players and the players, or the coaches and the coaches. I don't know. I don't know where the conflict is, but there's something that's wrong in that locker room, and the players just don't even seem motivated when they go out on the field. It seems like they don't care. Like they're just there going through the motions. There's no
Mhm.
desire to win, to like play as a team. And I think ultimately that's probably the thing that makes me think they're the worst team in this playoffs is they're not going to try. They have not tried for the past month and a half. Maybe they'll flip a switch. Maybe they'll go out there and be like, this is the playoffs. It really counts. And all of a sudden they'll look like they did last year. But I just find it, as of right now, hard to believe that they'll be any different than what we've seen over the past month and a half.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll see. Because those players on that roster don't deserve a one and out. So we'll see if they can flip a switch.
it's
Um,
it's a great team. They have great players
yeah.
at pretty much every position except the secondary and their linebackers. But
Yep.
it's crazy to think how bad they've been considering the amount of raw talent that's on that team.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So those are our predictions for the Super Wild Card weekend going down. Um, and we'll see how it all turns out, and we'll be back with you to discuss the next upcoming games following Super Wild Card weekend. Break those down, and of course tackle the upcoming games. But we won't know that until after these games are played. So we will all be intently watching as the drama unfolds. But before we jump off this ship of the NFL in terms of the playoffs, um, let's go with Rob. Who is your favorite to win the Super Bowl? Who do you think? Who do you think out of all of these teams that made it, who's your favorite?
Man, I'm so torn. My brain says the Ravens, but my gut says the Cowboys.
Of
It's like I
course.
said, the Cowboys are the only team I see in the playoffs that have arguably the best player at all of those money five positions, like I talked about before. Uh, there's other teams that have good players at all of those positions, but there's none that have five that could be the best. There's no one that has a Micah Parsons and a CD Lamb and a Dak Prescott and a Tyron Smith and a Daron Bland. Those are the five of the best at their positions, and it's hard for me to see how that team could lose unless they do it to themselves. Which there's every possibility they could do it to themselves. They have done that throughout the season. For the past 28 years, they've really done a lot of things to themselves. You think back to that Cowboys playoff game against the Seahawks in 2009, when all they had to do was kick the game-winning field goal, and they fumbled the snap on that and lost because they couldn't even snap the field goal properly. Uh, that's always a fear for the Cowboys in the playoffs, and I really think that's the only thing that could stop them from at least winning the NFC. But then on the other hand, you have the Ravens, who have just been absurdly dominant, no matter what the level of their competition is. And there's really no reason to think they'll stop doing that, except they also have struggled in the playoffs, especially under Lamar Jackson. They have not been a good team in the playoffs with him. So really, to me, those are the two best teams in their own conferences right now. But both of them have struggled in the playoffs, and I think we need to see if they can avoid doing that this year. But if they do and they play up to their potential, I would say either one of those two teams will be the Super Bowl winner this year.
Yeah. Great picks. Honestly, I'm probably going to go with the Ravens. Uh, I think between the two and the two conferences, I think the Ravens on the AFC. And I just, I have a gut feeling with the 49ers. And not just to pick both first seed teams, but I just feel like they're the most complete teams in each conference. There's been some hiccups along the road, but overall they've been playing really great football. We'll see. I know there's been some speculation of, oh, well, they benched their players. We'll see if that hurts them in any way moving forward after, because they're not going to be playing this wild card weekend. They'll be playing 2 weekends, or not this weekend, next weekend. But we'll see. We'll see how those teams emerge after a little bit more rest. But I think just on paper, those teams are just, I mean, stacked all the way. They do have their problems. We've already kind of went over that with our power rankings. But I would say for both conferences, AFC, I would say the Ravens have the best chance of winning it. And the NFC, I would say the 49ers have the best chance of winning it.
I'll tell
Alrighty.
you what, one reason why I'm also picking the Cowboys over the Niners is because I think the Rams are going to beat the Lions, and I think the Rams are probably the only team in the league capable right now of going into San Francisco and beating San Francisco. Because not only are
Yeah.
they divisional opponents who have played twice this year, the Rams have just always seemed to have like a thing for beating the 49ers in big moments. And I would not be surprised if that's what happened again this year.
Yeah. I could absolutely see that happening too. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's gonna be interesting how it all shakes out. That's for sure. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Alrighty, dark horse contenders, our last segment of the NFL playoffs that we'll talk about tonight. Who do you think is your dark horse contender in each conference?
I think in the NFC, I'm gonna have to go with the Green Bay Packers. I know I've talked
Okay.
about them a lot tonight, and maybe that's just unconscious bias because the Cowboys are playing them this weekend, and I've been reading a lot about how good they are. But when you have a quarterback who's playing like that, I think you can beat anyone. Uh, there's really only three or four really, really good quarterbacks in the playoffs this year that could take their teams all the way, and I think Jordan Love is one of them. And it would not surprise me if the Packers went on a run, won the NFC, and won the Super Bowl. Just because if Jordan Love keeps playing the way he has, I don't know if I'd be surprised at them beating anyone. I don't think it's going to be easy for them to do, but it's certainly not impossible if Jordan Love is playing at the level he's been playing at for the entire playoffs. Like I said, it all depends on how he does in the playoffs against good teams, which is very different than who he's been playing in the regular season. But I could definitely see the Packers on the NFC side. On the AFC side, that's a little tougher because I feel like there's really only three teams in the AFC that you realistically could imagine winning a Super Bowl. The Ravens, the Browns, and the Bills. But dark horse, I think I'd have to go with the Texans because kind of like what I just said about the Packers and Jordan Love. When you have a quarterback who's playing at that high level, like C.J. Stroud, like Jordan Love, I don't think you can ever really be counted out in any game. You always have a chance, no matter who you're playing, no matter how much better their team is than your team. You got a chance as long as you have that guy. And C.J. Stroud is that guy. Jordan Love is that guy. These are two teams that could beat anyone they play, and I would not be surprised if they manage to fight their way to a championship game or even the Super Bowl.
Yeah, great choices. Great choices. I will say, NFC wise, I'm gonna go with the Rams. I think that they have the one of the better shots in the NFC. I'm just not that high on the Packers like you are. But I think that, you even mentioned it. I think out of any of the teams in the NFC to go and knock out the 49ers, I think it would be the Rams. And I think with that momentum, they could carry that into the Super Bowl or even the championship round. let alone the Super Bowl. So, knocking out a big team like that could just be all the team needs motivation wise to keep going. So, I think the Rams do have a really great roster. Matthew Stafford's done this already, so he knows what he signed up for. He knows what he needs to do. Veteran quarterback knows what he's knows the job ahead. And I would say the Rams for the NFC. AFC wise, now it really depends. Would you consider, since the Browns are at 5, would you consider them a dark horse contender since they are on the
Personally,
outside looking in?
I mean, I don't think I would personally because in my head they're one of the only three teams in the AFC that realistically have a chance. But
Yeah,
I think any team that's not, guaranteed a home game in the playoffs, you could call it dark horse. So
yeah. I would go with the Browns, but I agree with you in that realistically, I see the Browns, the Bills, Ravens, and I'll even throw the Dolphins in there. I for some reason I feel like they're gonna perform well in the playoffs. I just feel like that they're just gonna get a fire under them. Mike McDaniels is gonna get that crew going. And yeah, so I think the Dolphins could also contend. But for let's just say Browns are going to be one of the top contenders. If I'm going with a dark horse contender out of the other teams I did not list, I probably would agree with you. I would go with the Texans. And as much as it would hurt my heart for the Texans to win a Super Bowl before the Titans, I actually don't know what I would do with myself. That's when I would go on suicide watch. But still, I do think that as for the reasons that we've mentioned for a little bit now, CJ Stroud is that generation talent, a generational talent. And I think that if he plays as well as he's been playing, if not better, this team can fly higher than anybody. Don't count them out, especially, I mean, they do have a home game against the Browns. But I could easily see them, on the back of Shroud, or Stroud going all the way. So, yeah. So I would say Texans AFC, NFC. I'll go with the Rams.
I think those are both really good picks. You did mention the Dolphins again. I would like to propose making this a little interesting, okay? Because we strongly disagree on the Dolphins. I would like to propose. I would
Okay.
bet you a case of those like flavored Jack Daniels drinks, whatever they are, that the Dolphins will be eliminated from the playoffs this weekend.
Oh, oh. Mm. Do I feel so strongly about the Dolphins? You know what? I do. I do. I will take you up on that bet. I think they're going to surprise the Chiefs in Arrowhead. I think so. Um, God, if you're listening, please make it come true. Because yeah, I do. I think you're discrediting them a little bit, but again, I agree with what you're saying about them. Cold weather haven't really showed up a lot of different cases during the season. But I don't know. There's a gut feeling that I have that they're gonna show up. So
All right. Well, we have officially bet on it, and you'll be here during the Super Bowl, so that's when
I will.
we'll square up for whoever wins
Yes,
that
we
bet.
will. Yes, we will, and we'll see the Dolphins in the Super Bowl. No, I'm kidding. I won't. I'm not gonna say that.
Gonna say that's a little far.
That's a little far. That's a little too far. But yeah, I think they'll advance past this wild card weekend. Alrighty. So now we're gonna step away from the playoffs because there's been a lot of other news circulating. Some of the teams that didn't make the playoffs. We know this is a fun season where head coaches and offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators and other coaches lose their jobs right after the season ends. But we've had, honestly, I mean, you can talk for yourself, Rob, but I would say that this has been probably one of the off seasons that has just surprised me the most with how many honestly generational talent coaches have either stepped down, moved to a different role in the organization, been fired, and also in college too. And I'll start us off. Nick Saban retiring from Alabama. What is that going to mean for the SEC moving forward? And I think that's something that's is going to be interesting to keep our eye on, especially with the not to get too much into it, but the SEC is going to be going from its format of kind of those that split conference into just one. So now you're having to play for the top two spots. Not that that really has changed. But is Alabama going to be a contender next year? What do you think, Rob?
Well, after Nick Saban announced his retirement, a bunch of the top recruits to Alabama recruited from
I
Alabama.
did see that. Yeah,
So not only are they losing the greatest coach of all time in college football, they're also losing a ton of talented players. And I think you have a real risk of the SEC just being Georgia and a bunch of nobody else. Because if Alabama has any hope of remaining competitive, they're going to have to really go far in the playoffs next year. They have to prove to people that they're still Alabama without Nick Saban, without all those players that they just lost. That's the only way I think they can regain some of that status that they had and start getting some of those recruits back. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think Alabama's going to, I mean, they've been falling apart slowly over the past few years, anyways. I think without Saban, without all those talented players, they're going to completely crumble. I don't think they're even going to make the playoffs next year.
yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think it's going to be tough going for the Alabama group moving forward, especially in a SEC that is, with especially Texas and Oklahoma coming and joining. We saw what Texas was able to do. I know they lost against Washington, but they've been a tough team this past year. So things are going to be shooken up in the SEC. But moving from college, as that was just a big name that went out. What are some of the coaches that surprised you the most, Rob?
Okay, so there were two that really surprised me, and the first was Pete Carroll because I thought he did a great job, with what he had over the past few years. He just seems like a great head coach. It seems like the players that he has really love to play for him. Um, I think it's kind of sad that that's the way his head coaching career in Seattle ends, is him being asked to, step down and take like an advisory role or whatever it is he's going to be doing. Although I guess maybe he did it himself. I don't think he did because I feel like if he still wanted to be involved with the team, he would have wanted to be the head coach. I don't know that for a fact. That's just a gut feeling I have. The second one that surprised me, and I'm sure it surprised you too, was Mike Vrabel being fired
Absolutely.
because he's just been such a great coach for the Titans since he's gotten there. And obviously, he's had two bad years, but he's had a bad team both of those years. You can't expect, I mean, unless you're Mike Tomlin, you can't expect a coach to take a bad roster and have a winning season. Especially with all the uncertainty at the quarterback situation, and the offensive line hasn't been good. And, ever since AJ Brown left, there's still been that void at the number one wide receiver spot. And the defense got really banged up. So even though they have talented players, they gave up a lot of points the past 2 years because of injuries. It's just a lot of stuff that was kind of out of his control that destroyed his career there. And then I know we talked about this earlier, but I thought the report that came out from Diana Rossini that the reason Vrabel got fired was because of the comments he made while being accepted into the Patriots Hall of Fame during last season. That was just
Yeah.
wildly like interesting to me because I don't know how you can look at a great head coach like Vrabel, who is good for your organization, and be like, you know what, those comments are enough. I don't want you here anymore. Like that. That just is wild to me and mind blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think as a Titans fan, it certainly surprised me that he was going to be fired. There was all season long, there was these, rumors that he wasn't going to be the head coach moving forward. But a lot of those rumors had him being either traded to New England, not him being fired. And so him being fired was, just as much to you, it was a big surprise to me. And honestly, from what I've heard that's been leaked, at least, from what I've been taking in from the Titan standpoint, is it seems like this past offseason when Amy Adams uh ended up hiring Rand Carthon for the job of GM, there was already some discontent with Vrabel. Vrabel wanted a completely different guy. Blanking on the guy's name, but Vrabel wanted a different guy. So from the start of this season, Vrabel thought he was going to be getting this this general manager that he wanted. And so already there's some discontent within the front office, head coach, GM, owner, all of it from the start. And then you start to kind of see how the Titans played. And there just seemed like there was something that was just wrong with the team this whole season. From mistakes, obviously it wasn't a talented roster, but there just seemed to be something deeper. And I think some of these newer reports that I've been seeing coming out is that the relationship between Mike Vrabel, Rand Carthon, and Amy Adams deteriorated as the season went on. I don't think it was the comment he made in New England that was the nail in the coffin. I think it added to it. And Mike Vrabel is a very he's the type of figure that wants to be the alpha dog. He wants to be the alpha male. He wants to run the team like he wants to see it. He doesn't want to necessarily work with equal or less than, say in the organization. And he's had that for the past number of years. When Amy Adams brought Rand Carthon in, it was ushering in a new era. And I think Mike Vrabel did not want to accept that. He did not want to agree with it. I think there was discontent throughout the draft process with him and Rand Carthon on choosing picks. I'm strongly believe Carthon actually had more say than Vrabel did, and this is in one of the more recent drafts. That he's had more say than Vrabel has had for the Titans, and so I think that set him off a little bit. But long story short, I think there has been a lot of disconnect with all three, parties, and that being the case, I think it has led to this team being pulled apart in what it's supposed to do. Are we going for the full rebuild? Are we trying to build this from the ground up again? Given the holes in the roster, the terrible offensive line, trying to build around potentially the future hope of Will Levis being this generational talent that we were able to see in some of these games. Or is Mike Vrabel just wanting to win because he wants to win and doing all of these things that aren't really falling in line with what Adams and Carthon want? So I think there was a lot of disconnect with that whole thing. And I think it just unfortunately came crumbling down. And I think that at the end of the season, Amy Adams was forced to kind of fire Vrabel because it's either I commit to Rand Carthon and commit to this full rebuild now that we have potentially our franchise quarterback in Will Levis, build around this guy, that kind of strategy, or do we go with Mike Vrabel? And I think it was a hard choice, but I think at the end of the day, Adams went with Carthon, their more recent hire. And I think Vrabel unfortunately got himself in a lot of trouble this season. And you hate to see it because he is a successful coach. I certainly did not want to see him get fired. But unfortunately that did happen. So yeah, as it shows you what inner strife can do to a team. So
Well, does that concern you all as a Titans fan, losing a good coach to bad blood like that? I mean, that can't, make you confident in what's coming next, right?
absolutely not. No, I hope I'm wrong, but I kind of agree with Taylor Lewan and his kind of podcast, Bussin' with the Boys. He came on and I believe he was on the Rich Eisen show when the news officially broke. And his first reaction was, "This is a mistake." And I kind of agree with him in terms of, this is a mistake. I know you got to handle what's going on, if you have differencing of opinions. But just to fire him, I don't know if that was the right move. Maybe potentially getting a trade pick for him. Maybe, I mean, I don't know what could have been done better, but it doesn't make me feel any better as a Titans fan moving forward, especially with this head coaching spot vacancy. I don't know what's going to be next. There's some great names on the table. Dan Quinn, I
Yeah.
know you would hate us snagging him.
I think he's going to
But
see it.
well, I really hope not. But
Me too.
regardless of what transpires, I don't know how the Titans are going to be able to replace a guy like Vrabel, especially right now.
Yeah.
So I honestly, I'm hoping for the best, but I'm also knowing that this could be not a great next season for the Titans moving forward. I don't want to repeat the years where the Tennessee Titans were in a drought for longer than 5 years in the early 2000s. So like I don't want to do that. Um, I'm hoping it's a quick Bengals rebuild in 1 year and we're bouncing back up and make it to the Super Bowl. That would be wonderful. Let's do that. So I hope we find our guy, and we can just cry all about, oh, Mike Vrabel's gone. But, unfortunately, he is gone and we got to move on. We got to find our next guy and hopefully, you know, it's a guy Will Levis really connects with. It's a guy that's the same mind as Ran Carthon, Amy Adams, and the organizations in terms of direction. Hopefully, everyone's on the same page. Team's not torn. I think those are the positives moving forward and building around Will Levis. The Titans have a lot of, if not some of the most cap space of a lot of teams moving in this offseason. I unfortunately think if Mike Vrabel's gone, Derrick Henry's going to be soon to go, and Tannehill's going to be gone as well. And so I think they're going to be, and who knows about D Hop? I hope he stays, but he also might be gone too. So it's very interesting that the direction the Titans could go in, but they have the number 7 overall pick. They have the cap space to start to rebuild this team. And first and foremost, it's protecting the quarterback, protecting Will Levis. It's the offensive line. It has been too much. It has been in shambles for way too long. They need to actually sit down and actually fix this. And that's not signing Andre Dillard to a 3-year, $30 million deal when he's played like poop in Philly, and expecting him to do much better. That's just one player, but build the offensive line, give Will Levis weapons. Let's see what this kid can do. He obviously can play well, and you know that's the positives moving to this season. I'm hoping the inner strife does not cause more of that in the seasons moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, inner strife, though, I mean, talk about a way to lose a locker room is getting rid of a, player consensus favorite coach like Mike Vrabel.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, no, it's definitely not going to be a fun year for you next year, I think, buddy. I'm sorry.
Mm-mm.
Uh,
No, no,
but
I'm expecting the worst, but I'm optimistic. I have hope.
well, that's always good to have hope. Uh, you know,
That's so just well, that's good to have hope, but your dreams will be crushed.
I mean, it's hard to believe in the Titans right now. That's all.
I know it's tough, but you know what? Hopefully, the new guy comes in, motivates the group even more than Mike Vrabel did, and everyone's like, "Yes, we'll play and die for this guy." So we'll see. Maybe we'll get our own version of Dan Campbell, but who knows? We'll see.
Certainly a lot of good candidates out there this year. But
Yeah.
one of the things I found the most interesting about this coaching cycle is where Mike Vrabel very well might be going. New England,
Hmm.
Bill Belichick, left the New England Patriots today
Yep.
uh, after, whatever, 26 years he was there winning Super Bowls. It's kind of crazy to think that he's available again. Uh, I don't think he's as good of a coach as a lot of people would say. And it's because he was a head coach for many years before he got to New England with Tom Brady, and he was not good in those years. And then every season he's coached since Tom Brady, it has not been good. I think he's uniquely gifted as a defensive coordinator. And I think he's a great leader of men. And I think he could be a good head coach. But I think he's terrible in terms of picking personnel on the offensive side of the ball. I think he's terrible at play calling on the offensive side of the ball. And I think he desires control too much to allow there to be people who are good decision makers in that position. So wherever he goes, I feel like unless you have like a very firmly established personnel system and a very established offense, and you're like, this is the way it's going to be, and if we're going to hire you, it has to be like that, and you get him to agree to it beforehand, I would be concerned. Because unless you have a generational quarterback like Tom Brady, who can also be your offensive coordinator at the same time, the way he was in New England for so many years, I would be worried about your offense. I think your defense would be phenomenal. I know Mike Florio reported today that the Cowboys are interested in hiring Bill Belichick, which makes no sense to me because McCarthy has given us 3 straight 12-5 playoff seasons. I don't know why you would get rid of him, but I think Dallas is one of the few places where he would really fit because you have the established quarterback, you have the established offense, you have the established personnel guy with Will McClay, although he might leave to become general manager somewhere. He would really just be there to be the defensive coordinator and like the overall leader. He wouldn't have too much say on personnel or offense. And I think he
Yeah.
needs a place like that. Like maybe the Chargers would be another situation I think he could go where he could really improve their defense, be a good leader, but he could have Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator and just let that side of the ball be. Um, yeah, but what's your reaction to all this Bill Belichick stuff going on?
Yeah, I obviously shocking because we both, ever since we were young, Bill Belichick was around and he's been winning Super Bowls as we grew up. And so it's him, Pete Carroll, Nick Saban, some of these guys that have been around for so long are not going to be there next season. And I think that's just wild to think about. But I do think you're right. I think Bill Belichick is a little overrated. And I do think it was a partnership between him and Brady that led to um, the amount of Super Bowls that they won together. Certainly not one over the other. And I agree. I think he does make some mistakes in terms of personnel, offensively wise. That's led to some bad decisions and led to, honestly, the Patriots team as it is right now, which was not stellar this season. Of course, they had a not so great roster moving forward this season. A lot of other problems, but he didn't really do it much to right the ship. So that being the case, you know, I actually don't know if he's going to go and coach another team, you know, um, in terms of a head coach uh, role. Maybe I'm wrong, and I very well could be. But he's also getting older, and the game of football has evolved. Those Belichick years, at least in my opinion, it's becoming a lot more faster paced, and it's not as favorable to when he was winning. So I don't know. I think he could very well step into a position at the Chargers, like you mentioned. I think that's probably the one of the best coaching vacancies, that and the Falcons. Other than the Falcons like quarterback room, they need to get that fixed somehow. But in terms of those, and well, Las Vegas as well in terms of location. And if you have Devonte Adams there, although there's been rumors that Devonte Adams is going to go reunite with Aaron Rodgers in New York, because Garrett Wilson changed his number from 17 to 5. So 17 is now vacant. I don't believe it. I think Adams is staying in Las Vegas. But to go back to my point with the Chargers being, I think, one of the most favorable positions for head coach to go into, I wouldn't be surprised if actually Mike Vrabel goes in there. I know Patriots fans are calling Mike Vrabel to come home, but I the Patriots roster is just so bad. I don't know how anyone would be enticed other than Mike Vrabel's love for the Patriots is the team he played for. It's going to be tough walking into that place and be able to fix it without people calling for your head. And I think that's going to be difficult for anybody, let alone Mike Vrabel. And Mike Vrabel has done well when there's been a um, quarterback that has been decent enough, such as Ryan Tannehill, to build around. And the Patriots don't have that. Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones are not those guys. And it could be enticing potentially with them maybe trading up to get Caleb Williams, maybe Drake May. We might see Jalen Daniels. That's the LSU guy, right? Jalen Daniels. Yeah,
Jaden Daniels.
Jaden. Jaden Daniels. Okay, yeah, not LD. Jaden Daniels. Um, Still, you know, maybe one of those guys turns it around in New England. But I think Mike Vrabel, if there's any place that would be best for him to go, I think it would be with the Chargers. Um, but I could also see Bill Belichick there too. So definitely probably one of the best coaching spots for head coach wise.
I think Vrabel is like a lock to go back to New England because I think that's where his heart really is. He played there as
Yeah.
he won 3 Super Bowls. He's in the Patriots Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor, whatever it's called. I think he wants to be there more than anywhere else. And I think that's where
Yeah.
he's going to end. I think I saw in one of the reports I was reading that he's also like by far the number one choice for Robert Kraft as their next head coach. So if he really wants to go back there, I guess it'll be up to him, but I can't imagine him ending up anywhere else right now. But I also agree with you that Bill Belichick would be the perfect fit for the Chargers. I think that would be a great marriage of good offensive coordinator and good quarterback, to keep him on his side of the ball, the defense, and just take care of stuff there. I think that's where he would function best. And I think he could make the Chargers a really scary team next year
Yeah.
if he goes there and fixes up that defense a little bit.
Yeah.
Um,
Because they've been not so great either.
yeah, for sure. Which is weird because they have so many talented players on that defense. They got Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa up front, and they have Derwin James on the back end and Paulson Adebo at corner. I don't know who they have at linebacker, but they have a lot of talent on that defense, so it should be better than it is for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, so, did we cover all the coaches now? Have we covered all the
I
insane
believe so.
coaches from
I believe
the
so. I
past
don't know if we
few
want to.
years? I mean, we could talk about Ron Rivera or any of those coaches everyone expected to be fired, but
Yeah, Arthur Smith for having that, big blowout at the end of the game. Why did you score points? Yeah, we won't show you the expletives that were said that you can visibly see. But that was just embarrassing. If anything cost him that job, it was
humiliating.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
humiliating. Who wants to
his
go and be
players
like,
could not
that's my
respect him after.
coach? Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
who's gonna want to
The
listen to
players are
that
like,
guy?
that's not our guy. That's not him. Yeah.
Were you
Very
okay with
not
that, by the
great.
way? The Saints
What?
like scoring it. Were you okay with the Saints scoring that touchdown at the end of the
Yeah.
game? Because
Why not?
I was too. I'm like, that's football. They want to go run up the
Exactly.
score, stop them from doing it. If you can't, then
Exactly.
every right to do it.
Exactly. What the Falcons, if you don't want to, stop them. Simple. Stop them.
Yeah,
If you can't
exactly.
stop them, then don't yell at the coach that it's unfair that you ran up the score. And I mean, at the end of the day, it was what, 48-17? Was that the final score?
Yeah,
I think something like that. So even if it was 41-17, that's still a blowout. So it doesn't matter if they have 48 or 40 or 41, still looking at it, it still does not look like a close game, even though it started out as one, which was crazy.
exactly. Maybe if you were a little more upset when they were building that lead and stopped them from doing it in the first place, rather than waiting until the end when they went up by 30 points instead of 28 or whatever it was, uh, would have been a little better, in my opinion.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Alrighty. Well, I think we've covered a lot already in this first episode of the Redzone Rodeo. So thank you for sticking with us. But we have one last thing to cover before we close out for the night. So we have the new spring league that will be starting up March, April into the spring. And it is through a merger of two of the previous spring leagues. The USFL, United States Football League, that's been around for 2 seasons now after its brief time in the 1980s, and the XFL, which played one season last spring. Um, and they decided to merge during the football season to create the United Football League, the UFL. And I know when we first started watching the spring leagues 2 years ago, one of the questions that we had when, especially the emergence of the XFL came around last year, is how are these two leagues going to compete for talent against each other? It seems like they're just, setting each other up for failure by trying to grab everybody away from the other. Um, and so there's obviously been a lot of people who are upset about this merger that I've seen online, and maybe you guys have seen as well. But in the long run of things, for a consistent and stable spring league football, to go the long distance, a merger I think had to be done. You may be upset at how it happened and whatnot, but the end result is it did. And kickoff is going to be when, Rob? When is kickoff? Let's get hyped.
Kickoff is March 30th, 2024. Only 2 months away now.
Oh
And
my
I
goodness.
so excited. I mean, I tell you what, I know a lot of people were upset about the merger because a lot of people lost their jobs. But I think this kickoff game, the Arlington Renegades versus the Birmingham Stallions, is going to be the most hyped up spring football league matchup in a long time because you have the champions from the USFL, the Birmingham Stallions, against the champions from the XFL, the Arlington Renegades. And when you have two championship teams going up against each other, I think that's going to naturally build up a lot of hype. So I would not be surprised if this kickoff game ends up being the most viewed spring football league of all time. I think it's going to get a lot of excitement. It's going to build up a lot of buzz. And I think the league is going to get a lot of momentum from having that happen. And also, I just want to point out, a lot of people say spring league football isn't worth watching, but two NFL All Pros have been taken from spring league football in back-to-back years. Cavante Turpin was with the New Jersey Generals in the USFL's first year, and then he went to the Dallas Cowboys, where he became an All-Pro punt returner by at least the NFL Player Association vote. And then Brandon Aubrey was in the USFL playing for the Birmingham Stallions for the past 2 years, and now he's the Cowboys kicker. And he blew away the record for the most consecutive field goals to start a career. He also blew away the record for the most touchbacks in a season ever. He's just been an insane kicker. He's definitely going to be a first team All Pro. So that's two All Pro players that just came out of the Spring League in the past 2 years. So you might say that it's not worth watching, but there are players in this league who will be in the NFL the coming year and who will have a really serious impact on their teams. So there's a lot of reason to watch it. And I think this is probably the most exciting year of spring football we've had so far.
Absolutely. And just to kind of reiterate that same point, with the NFL, think about the countless people that get overlooked, or maybe just aren't given the shot, or maybe just perform or underperform at the combine or in practice camps and whatnot, and they don't make the cut. This is a league for those people who are still professionals at football. Let me tell you, watching the spring leagues these past couple years has been great fun. But it's opportunities, not to echo Dwayne The Rock Johnson and Danny Garcia, who are one of the two spokespeople for this new league, the UFL. But it's a league of opportunity. And with Turpin, and with others, it's just Brandon Aubrey. Sorry, I don't know why I blanked on his name. Aubrey and Turpin and countless others, they have made a difference in the NFL, all because of them being able to show off what they can do in the spring league. And so, this is a great opportunity for people. You all should be encouraged to watch. Go out, support these guys that are trying to make their dreams come true as professionals in their positions in football. And it's not crazy to say some of these people are going to be in the NFL. So this upcoming season, 2024. So you definitely should tune in. We're going to be bringing you all the action, breakdowns, predictions, power rankings, you name it. But just to get info, so if you all are still learning about the UFL, here's a quick thing. So the way they broke this down with merger wise is they broke it down by each spring league that existed previously. So you have the USFL division and you have the XFL division. Now, each spring league prior to this merger had 8 teams. They had to cut them down to 4. Now, there's pros and cons to that. Of course, the cons is that, a lot of people lost their jobs and not everybody is going to be on the rosters of these teams. The pro is that the level of play and talent is only going to go up because from those 4 teams that are no longer going to be a part of this initial season, they may be added back later when the league expands. But those players were now placed into a pool that could be drafted to the current 4 teams that still exist, now a part of this merged league, the UFL. So the level of talent is raised, and you're going to see a lot of great play. It's not going to be your typical, oh well, it's not really professional football. These guys are going to be good, and just wait. It's going to be a fun season. But just to give you a rundown, so for the XFL, the teams that survived the merger are the Arlington Renegades, which is Rob's favorite team. They won the XFL championship this past spring. They are going to be joined by the DC Defenders, the San Antonio Brahmas, and the 4th team is going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks, which is where the XFL had actually a lot of success in terms of a team following, people showing up in droves. Great stuff from them. That's going to be your XFL division. The other four teams, like I said before, they could make a comeback. Not this season. Those are going to be those four teams. The other four on the USFL side, the four that survived the merger, you have the Birmingham Stallions, which are your two-time USFL champion for back-to-back seasons. You have the Memphis Showboats, and in terms of the teams that were kind of left for the USFL, um, you have the Birmingham Stallions, Memphis Showboats, and why am I blanking on the third team?
Houston Roughnecks.
Well, yeah, we have the Houston Roughnecks, but they got rebranded. What was the?
Um, the other
It
team that's
was Michigan Panthers. That's right. I don't know why it blanked, but Michigan Panthers survived. So you have, I'm sorry, the Birmingham Stallions, you have the Michigan Panthers, you have the Memphis Showboats, and then the Houston franchise in the USFL survived. Um, they were called the Houston Gamblers in the USFL. However, the popularity with the Roughnecks being the name for the Houston team in the XFL kind of won over the hearts of the people putting together the UFL. So the Houston Gamblers and the coaching staff and players that were on that team are going to be relabeled as the Houston Roughnecks. And that's going to be my team that I'm going to be rooting for moving forward. But we're going to be giving you all the details on the other six teams besides our favorites as well, as unbiased as we possibly can. But those are going to be kind of your breakdowns of the eight teams. Go out, start looking at them, figure out who you're going to be rooting for this season. And of course, keep checking back in as we'll give you all the updates, predictions, power rankings, you name it. It's going to be fun. Definitely tune in. It's going to be worth your while. And who doesn't want more football? I do. So let's start watching more football in the spring to get over the fever of not having the NFL around during the off season. But we'll be bringing you that news as well. Well, Rob, is there anything else that we have failed to cover in this gallant first episode?
No, I don't think so. We really went over a lot. I mean, starting with the playoffs through the coaching news and now talking about the UFL, I think we pretty much hit everything there is to talk about right now. But, I'm just really excited to keep talking about football with you and, everyone else who might be watching us right now. There's so much coming up to cover, not just the NFL playoffs, but the draft and the offseason, and then obviously the start of the spring league in March. There's just a lot of football stuff to talk about. And I'm really glad we could be here to talk about it.
Absolutely. And you guys following us and watching this is going to be a huge like. So please, if you're interested in following with us, not only covering the NFL, covering the UFL, we'll cover some college stuff. We're going to do it all because we love football and we want to bring you everything about football because that's what we do at the Redzone Rodeo. So please, if you love us, want to follow us, like, subscribe, we'll be here with you guys next week moving forward. And yeah, get ready for some fun stuff because just because there is an off season doesn't mean the fun ends. So we'll bring you all the action. All right, Rob, anything else?
Go Cowboys! Beat the Packers this weekend.
Well, we all know the Titans are going to win the Super Bowl. So
Of course.
yeah, there's just going to be something that, slides in and they'll be like, oh, actually the Titans are in. It's going to be something crazy, but just wait. Yeah.
Yeah. Will
Mike Vrabel
Levis.
was only the start. Yes, actually, just Will Levis. He's going to take on all of the teams. Billy the Kid is the real deal. A lot of hype. Anyways, enough nonsense. We will see you all later. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, see y'all.